Taking the myths out of mutual funds. Counsel on fund investing. Powering up with online resources. Power Trader expands your reach. And intrinsic value in a Vancouver company, Intrinsyc Software. All that and more today on Investors Online. This is Investors Online, your virtual read on the markets. Brought to you by the Hong Kong Bank of Canada, Canada's global financial services group, with your host, Pat Bolland.
Now, if a mutual fund returns 40% over 5 years, you'd think that was pretty good, right? Not necessarily. Levy Folk and Richard Webb of the Fund Council newsletter have a way to tell if a fund is consistent. They'll share that and their fund recommendations later. And powering up with Power Trader, a website to suit your investment needs, and we've got it. And our featured chief executive officer is with a little Vancouver-based software company called Intrinsyc Software. After being invited to join Microsoft at Comdex, they're getting a lot of attention. All that and more in a moment. Next up, who is Intrinsyc Software anyway? And why is Microsoft so interested in them? We'll find out when we talk to the president, Derek Spratt. When Microsoft asked a little Vancouver company called Intrinsyc Software to be included at its booth at Comdex, a lot of people took notice, enough to push the stock price up. It went public last year at 40 cents in Vancouver, and the close on Friday was 2 1/4. Not bad. So who are these guys, and why is Microsoft so interested? Joining me is the president of Intrinsyc Software, all the way from Vancouver, Derek Spratt. And you can ask your questions in a minute, but I want to talk to Derek first because I don't really understand what Intrinsyc Software does. I mean, you're in embedded software. That's great. It's software. What does embedded software mean?
Well, that's a great question.
Thanks.
Only 3% of the 5 billion processors that shipped this year went into desktop computers, and that's a number that I think astounds people. They think of computer chips, they think of what sits on their desk.
Yeah.
And the other 97% go into things that are hidden, they're woven into the fabric of our lives, the cell phones, the cars, the fax machines, this kind of thing. And it's really exciting because what's happening is Moore's Law, which I don't know if the audience knows too much about that, but Moore's Law has relentlessly, over 25 years since the invention of the processor, driven the performance and the cost effectiveness.
Moore's Law being the doubling
every 18 months of the features and functionality, and what you've got now is in 1998 you're going to have 32-bit chips that are $10, and they're going to be in everything, and that's going to provide a lot of new features.
So embedded software is not something that's on your PC. It's something in, as you point out, in your car that's computerized to know when the engine's running and that kind of jazz.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now what is your role with embedded software?
Well, it's clear that Microsoft owns the desktop market, 92% market share now, and they want to get into a new greenfield opportunity. Sun with Java wants the same thing. And what we've now got is a situation where they've launched CE, which is Windows CE Compact Edition.
Yep.
And we're a horizontal play on that whole market.
CE standing for commercial...
no, it's Compact Edition. That's what it stands for. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's really exciting because what these guys have done, I've got a little unit here. This is what was introduced last year at Comdex, which is a handheld PC.
Yep.
And what's going on this year at Comdex, which is what Intrinsic's all about, my little stage prop here, is this guy, which is a full Pentium computer on a little board here. This
is that the smallest computer
in the world? Yeah, this is everything. This is including Ethernet. I mean, the whole thing, 72 megabytes of memory. It's all on board here. And what we've got is, this is one company called Cell Computing we're working with that is embracing Windows CE.
Yep.
And they're using Microsoft software with our tools and our web-enabling software to drive this thing into everything that you can imagine. Intel's very keen on this. All the processor vendors are very keen on this revolution.
This is the Microsoft Windows everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally not just going to be on your PC; it's going to be in your car
Right.
and using this kind of technology.
Absolutely, and people think of Windows as the windowing and the mouse, but actually the benefit to Windows is 3 or 4 million programmers, that critical mass of programmers, and the knowledge base, and so they can take Windows and dumb it down with CE so that it fits onto a floppy disk, and it can go into these very low-cost devices, and it may not have a display. One of the things Intrinsyc brings, for instance, our web technologies allow these embedded devices. You don't need a keyboard or a display anymore.
Okay, now let's talk about your relationship with Microsoft then.
Sure.
Because really, you weren't on the map in many people's minds until you show up at Comdex, which is a big computer show
Right.
in Las Vegas, and you're sitting right in the Microsoft booth.
Well, it started a month earlier when we first went, our very first trade show with them, Embedded West show in Silicon Valley, and we were taken a bit aback by it because we've gone from this $5 million investment with really nobody paying attention to us, betting on this new market appearing, you know, and only a small company like Intrinsyc that's a pure startup can play those types of games and take those risks. And we showed up with all of these interesting pieces of software, and Microsoft said, be a partner of ours, become an ISV, which stands for an independent software vendor, and join us. And then when we were at that show, they said, would you come with us to Comdex? And we didn't really think, you know, sure, that'll be great. But what they were really saying is, would you come with us and be in our booth and not be part of the 300 companies in the partnership pavilion, but be in the booth? And when we got to Comdex, we realized what was going on, that they have a major mission underway to attack this new market, and there's only 2 companies in the world that have turned out to be aligned this way with them on the CE strategy.
Yeah, but you're aligned with them right now. Don't you run the risk that they could just buy you?
Well, they, you know, we actually had that question asked to us because they brought 20 press tours a day through our booth, and they said, what are you going to say when someone asks you?
What's your canned answer?
Yeah, and the answer is, we're small, we're agile, we're 6 months ahead, and if we're not doing our job, then they won't want to steal or buy or control the market that we're in. And the bottom line is, we want that. We want them to be aggressively pursuing us. We want to always stay 6 months ahead, and we can do that. That's what the small companies bring to the table, is the agility, and it's our intellectual capital which allows us to just sort of attack these market segments and move forward. And if they're not interested in us, I don't think we're doing our job.
Yeah, staying ahead. I guess this is what the investors are looking at when the stock goes from 40 cents to 2.25. It's interesting. We got out of the chat room a question from UFO. The share price of ICS has rebounded nicely this week. Are you announcing anything today?
No. No, actually, I have to tell you, we're under non-disclosure with Microsoft.
Okay.
And
so you're not allowed to say something today, or not going to say something today?
We're not, I don't know exactly how to answer that. We're working for it, and all good things in good time. I think if people invest in our company, the thing I'd like them to bring home, if anything, is the message that these are buy and hold strategies. These are high-risk, pure plays in a new market. If Microsoft does well, and we continue to be good people and develop good software, we will do well. We've got great people, we've got good management. I don't think that we're in a position where you know, you're going to see huge news coming out of us every week. People have this expectation that there's this barrage of announcements, and we're working with a lot of companies under disclosure, and the reason for it is quite simple. We're doing compelling new things. They don't want their competitors to know what they're designing in, and that kind of thing.
You make an interesting point about the risk, and we'll get back after we take this break, and we'll look at the what the stock price has done the last little while to illustrate the kind of speculative play. And we'll take your questions for Derek Spratt of Intrinsyc Software. Calls now at 1-888-513-TVTV. Welcome back to Investors Online. I'm Pat Ball, and Derek Spratt of Intrinsyc Software is here to take your calls at 1-888-513-TVTV. We also have a chat room that's open, Derek, and I mean, you have been the subject of so much internet chat. It's almost unbelievable, and rumors going back and forth. But we do have lots of questions from the chat room. I'll start with with this one. How much dough does ICS have in the kitty?
Very little. We're about $400,000 in the Treasury right now. We announced about 2 weeks ago we're doing a $5 million special warrant financing round. A couple of reasons for that. One, we're really keen on doubling up our staff. We've got about 20 some odd active programmers, 30 people overall. We need to double that to address the opportunities.
To use the $5 million in that effort.
Oh, yes. Plus, it also helps us get onto a senior exchange. The TSE listing requirements are $5 million net tangible assets, and we're hoping that that financing plus additional business coming in will
So we're
hit
going to
that
see
needs
on the
test.
TSE. That's good news.
Well, we hope so. I can't make any guarantees.
No, you're not allowed to say that kind of stuff right off the bat on there. We've got a phone call, too. Lois, Vancouver.
Hi, Derek.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Derek?
Yes?
Derek, it's Lou Paquette calling. Just like to congratulate you on your alliance with Microsoft.
Well, thank you very much.
And I'm just wondering how this is going to translate into revenues and earnings in the next year.
Well, first of all, we're taking an aggressive market share strategy, and I have to explain a little bit about how companies are valued, maybe not as much in Canada, but as in the U.S. We're this year, I think 1997, half of the dollar volume in IPOs for tech companies this year over last year, but over 1,000 mergers and acquisitions. And you look at sort of the natural exit strategy, perhaps, for Intrinsyc. And coming back from Comdex, we also were invited to the Comdex Venture Forum, and we listened to a number of people talking, and we presented ourselves. And the issue there is companies are being valued on who their customer base is and what their market share is versus the revenue. So we've taken this really pure aggressive strategy on who cares about revenues, let's go after market share. But revenues are coming now. Over the next 6 months, we shift into a revenue story from a market share story, and then we'll be earnings in sort of late 98, early 99. So we're not really putting a lot of emphasis on revenues right now.
Yeah, Lou Paquette, who just asked that question over the phone, actually has an internet site too. He does emerging growth stocks overall, and he's been looking at this stock for a long time. I know that. We've got some more questions from chat too, and it kind of follows on some of this. What are director and employee stock options priced at?
Okay. First of all, what's really interesting about the option program is the Vancouver Stock Exchange originally had a 10% cap.
Yep.
And then they said for software companies they're trying to attract U.S.-based companies to list on Vancouver as an alternative to private mezzanine level financing, go public and get better valuations. And they said, we'll bump that to 20% or even more. It's a flexible limit now as long as the majority of the options go to the lab codes. In other words, not sort of one or two guys, traditional sort of promoter types.
Spread it around, in other words.
And so we've got options priced anywhere from sort of 70 to $1.50, 70 cents to $1.50 range, 3-year vesting. There's a whole period for the first number of months, and then there's a third that come out.
Yep.
And everybody shares in the upside. It keeps our salaries down, and it gives everybody the upside so that when everything works out, we're all singing from the same page on the same songbook.
More from the chat room. Do any funds have a position in ICS?
I don't think at this time they do. One of the reasons why we want to get onto a senior exchange is to attract the institutional investor. Certainly the current round of financing, the people that we're engaging in are of the institutional variety because it's a larger round this time. And so that'll be coming. I fully expect that. We had a lot of conversations at Comdex about that with the U.S. people. And I think we're just getting onto the radar screen now. Yeah,
you mentioned Comdex again, and one of the concerns I've always had in investing in junior intellectual capital companies as much as anything else is the intellectual capital, can go out the door pretty easily. The lab coats can walk out the door. The stock option plan is obviously there, but you also run the risk of intellectual capital being stolen or mimicked by your competition. You mentioned earlier that there was another person in the embedded business. Who is it, and how are you combating that competitive threat?
B Square is actually synergistically aligned with us right now. They're in
synergistically aligned.
How's that for? They're doing a number of things with CE and with Microsoft as well. But let's just assume that whether it's B Square or someone else, there is a competitor out there. And the answer is we have had huge success hiring first-class people. Matter of fact, it's a corporate policy that we hire just the very best. And we've created an environment that allows people to express themselves. And it's not the money necessarily for engineers. I'm an engineer, and I appreciate that their desire to make a difference and their desire to affect the world. And this is the golden age of embedded software, and they all want to play in this thing. They want to make a difference. And by keeping that environment and keeping those people creative,
how big is the embedded market, though?
Well, it's $2.5 billion worth of software today, but it's projected to hit about $5 billion in the next 2.5 years. It's growing very quickly.
Wow, unbelievable. And Microsoft will be all over it with you in tow, I take it.
Well, we hope so, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We've got some more calls out there, I believe. Ian, Stan, you've got a question?
Hello.
Hi, go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, I was just, you're talking that with that new technology and whatnot. I was just wondering how you feel about with what's going on, taking our You know how I mean, like the government with more and more information going on, the information age with the internet, all the information that's out there, and how it's controlling us?
Well, there's an interesting point. Somebody brought up, we had this web demonstration where we had a CE digital camera running our web software at Comdex, and people could come in from anywhere in the world and take pictures of us while we were at the show. It was kind of an interesting thing to do. And we knew everybody that did that. I mean, that
you could track everybody.
We saw everybody, every investor, everybody that dialed into our site. And the privacy issues, certainly when the internet gets embedded, like we're really talking about all these embedded devices becoming internet enabled, and one of the big things we're doing relates to that. And the privacy issues are very important, security issues are very important, and I think people have every right to be cautious and to be even slightly paranoid about what this may entail, because money is money, and people will take advantage of information if they can.
We would never be paranoid.
No, but I think that there's an issue of that this fellow brings up that's a very good point, which is that as these devices are created...
We're out of time to address it, though, but that's...
Yeah.
Derek, appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in again from Vancouver to explain all that.
Great.
For more info, folks, you can find it at your website, intrinsyc.com, and so that people should look it up.
Great, thank you.